She had been balancing books for 12 years, but when the numbers didn't add up, Margaret realized someone was using her company to launder money. Her CIA training taught her to follow patterns others missed. Welcome to One Human One Story. Before we tell this incredible story, have you ever worked with a quiet accountant who seemed to notice details others missed? Write in the comments, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit subscribe. Margaret Chen had been the senior accountant at Meridian Tech Solutions for 12 years. Her cubicle sat in the corner of the 4th floor, overlooking downtown Seattle's skyline. The view was spectacular, but Margaret rarely looked up from her computer screen. Numbers were her world. Spreadsheets, balance sheets, profit and loss statements, the language of business spoken in digits and decimal points. To her colleagues, Margaret was the quiet one, the reliable one, the woman who arrived at exactly 8 a.m. and left at 5:30 p.m. unless there was month-end closing to finish. She brought her lunch in a brown bag, drank coffee from the same ceramic mug that read "World's Okayest Accountant," a gag gift from the office Christmas party 3 years ago. She never gossiped, never complained, never made wave. What her colleagues didn't know was that Margaret Chen had once been Agent Margaret Chen, CIA intelligence analyst, specializing in financial intelligence and money laundering operation. For 8 years, she had tracked terrorist funding networks, drug cartel finances, and state-sponsored economic warfare from a windowless office in Langley, Virginia. She had followed money trails across 6 continents, identified patterns that led to the capture of international criminals, and prevented attacks that would have cost thousands of lives. But that was another life, another identity, another version of herself that she had carefully buried when she walked away from the agency 12 years ago. The official story was early retirement due to family obligations. The real story was burnout, post-traumatic stress from watching too much evil flow through financial systems, from knowing that every transaction she analyzed represented real suffering somewhere in the world. Margaret had chosen accounting because it felt safe. Corporate finances were clean, predictable, boring. No terrorists, no cartels, no state secrets, just ordinary business transactions for a mid-sized technology consulting firm in Seattle. Purchase orders and vendor payments, payroll and benefits administration, the mundane mathematics of legitimate commerce. Meridian Tech Solutions employed 347 people and generated approximately $42 million in annual revenue. They provided IT consulting services to businesses throughout the Pacific Northwest. Nothing glamorous. Database management, network security assessments, software integration projects, the kind of work that kept the modern economy running but never made headlines. Margaret knew every financial detail of the company. She had processed every invoice approved, every expense account reconciled, every bank statement. She understood the business model, the profit margins, the seasonal fluctuations. After 12 years, the patterns were as familiar as her own heartbeat, which is why she noticed when something changed. It started with a single transaction in September, a consulting payment from a company called Pacific Investment Partners for $47,500. The amount wasn't unusual. Meridian frequently handled projects in that range, but something about the transaction felt wrong. The client wasn't in their customer database. The project wasn't in their job tracking system. The invoice had been processed directly by the CEO, David Kellerman, without going through the normal approval workflow. Margaret flagged it for follow-up, but Kellerman explained it away. A rush project, a favor for an old friend. Sometimes clients preferred to work directly with senior management. Perfectly reasonable explanations. Margaret made a note in the file and moved on, but her training wouldn't let her forget. In October, there were 3 more payments from Pacific Investment Partners: $52,100, $38,750, $41,200. Again, processed directly by Kellerman. Again, bypassing normal procedures. When Margaret asked for project documentation, Kellerman became irritated. He reminded her that he was the CEO and didn't need to justify every business decision to the accounting department. Margaret apologized and dropped the subject, but she didn't stop watching. By November, The pattern was undeniable. Pacific Investment Partners had become Meridian's largest client, generating over $300,000 in revenue. But there were no project files, no timesheets, no deliverables, no client meetings documented in anyone's calendar. It was as if the company was paying Meridian for services that didn't exist. Margaret's CIA training had taught her to recognize financial anomalies, shell companies, money laundering schemes, the movement of illicit funds through legitimate businesses. Every instinct she had developed during 8 years at Langley was screaming that Pacific Investment Partners was not what it appeared to be. She began investigating quietly, carefully, using skills she hadn't exercised in over a decade. Pacific Investment Partners was incorporated in Delaware 2 years ago. The registered address was a strip mall mailbox service in Portland, Oregon. The corporate officers were listed as John Smith and Jane Doe, obviously fake names. The company had no website, no public records, no business licenses in any state database Margaret could access. But it had bank accounts, lots of them, in different states under slightly different names. Pacific Investment Group, Pacific Investment Holdings, Pacific Investment Management, all funneling money to legitimate businesses like Meridian Tech Solutions. Margaret recognized the pattern. It was a classic money laundering operation. Take dirty money from illegal activities, move it through a network of shell companies, make payments to legitimate businesses for fictional services. The clean money comes out the other side looking like normal business income. The question was, what kind of dirty money was being laundered? Drug proceeds, human trafficking profits, foreign intelligence payments, corporate espionage. The possibilities were endless, and none of them were good. Margaret faced a dilemma. She could report her suspicions to law enforcement and risk exposing her own background. The FBI would want to know how a corporate accountant had developed such sophisticated knowledge of money laundering techniques. Her CIA service was supposed to remain classified. Her new identity as Quiet Margaret Chen would be blown. Or she could stay silent, keep her head down, continue processing the payments, and pretend she hadn't noticed anything. Let someone else deal with the consequences. But Margaret had spent 8 years fighting financial crime. She had seen what happened when good people looked the other way. Money was the lifeblood of every criminal organization. Cut off the funding and you could stop operations that caused immeasurable harm. She made her choice. Margaret began building a case, working late nights and weekends, using vacation days to conduct surveillance, applying investigative techniques she had learned at Langley to trace the money backward from Meridian to its ultimate source. The trail led to a network of businesses throughout the Pacific Northwest: construction companies, import-export firms, real estate development corporations, restaurant chains, all receiving payments from variations of Pacific Investment Partners, all for services that seemed to exist only on paper. Margaret estimated that at least $15 million had flowed through the network in the past 2 years, money that originated from sources she couldn't identify but suspected were connected to organized crime. The Seattle area had seen a surge in drug trafficking and human trafficking operations recently. Law enforcement was struggling to track the financial infrastructure supporting these activities. Now, Margaret had found it, but she also realized she was in danger. Someone sophisticated enough to construct this money laundering network would have security measures in place, surveillance, counterintelligence capabilities. If they discovered that their operation had been compromised by a supposedly innocent accountant, they would take action to protect themselves. Margaret began taking precautions, varying her route to work, checking for surveillance, using encrypted communication methods when she needed to research sensitive information. The old skills came back easily, muscle memory from her years at Langley. She also began preparing an insurance policy, a comprehensive file documenting the entire money laundering network, bank records, shell company formations, transaction patterns, names and addresses, everything law enforcement would need to dismantle the operation. She stored copies in multiple secure locations, including a safety deposit box registered under an alias she had maintained since leaving the CIA. Margaret planned to turn the information over to the FBI once her documentation was complete, but she needed to be careful about how she did it. She couldn't afford to expose her own background. She would have to find a way to provide the information anonymously while ensuring it reached the right people. But someone was watching her. On a Thursday evening in December, Margaret was working late at the office, finishing her month-end reports. The building was mostly empty, just a few consultants working on deadline projects and the night security guard making his rounds. Margaret was alone on the 4th floor reviewing bank reconciliations when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy footsteps. Not the soft shoes of office workers, someone wearing boots. Margaret looked up from her computer screen. The fluorescent lights in the hallway had been dimmed for the evening, but she could see shadows moving past her cubicle. 2 men, maybe 3. They weren't walking toward the elevators. They were walking toward her corner of the floor. Margaret's training kicked in immediately. Threat assessment, escape routes, available weapons. She palmed her car keys, positioning the longest key between her fingers. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. She quietly opened her desk drawer and gripped the heavy metal stapler with her other hand. The footsteps stopped just outside her cubicle. "Miss Chen." The voice was calm, professional, almost friendly. "We need to talk." Margaret looked up to see 3 men in dark suits. They looked like corporate security or private investigators, clean-cut, well-dressed, but there was something in their eyes that suggested they were capable of violence if necessary. "I'm sorry," Margaret said, keeping her voice steady. "The office is closed. If you need to speak with someone, you'll have to call during business hours." The lead man smiled. "Actually, we need to speak with you specifically about your recent research activities." Margaret's blood ran cold. They knew. Somehow they had discovered that she was investigating the money laundering network, which meant her life was now in immediate danger. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "I'm just finishing some year-end accounting work." "Margaret," the man said, using her first name, "we know exactly what you've been doing. We know about your late nights, your unusual database searches, your interest in Pacific Investment Partners. We also know about your previous employment at Langley, Virginia." Margaret's mind raced. They had identified her CIA background, which meant this wasn't just about the money laundering. This was about national security, foreign intelligence, the kind of operation that killed people who asked too many questions. "Who are you?" she asked. "Think of us as problem solvers," the man replied. "And right now you're a problem that needs to be solved." Margaret had seconds to make a decision. Fight or flight. She was outnumbered 3 to 1. The men were probably armed. Running would be difficult in her narrow cubicle with limited escape routes, but she had one advantage they might not be expecting. They thought she was just an accountant. Margaret stood up slowly as if she were going to cooperate. The men relaxed slightly. Then she threw the stapler at the nearest man's face with perfect accuracy, while simultaneously diving behind her desk. The stapler connected with a solid thud, and the man cursed loudly. Margaret rolled across the floor toward the next row of cubicles, using the office furniture as cover. "She's moving!" one of them shouted. "Kitchen area!" Margaret was already running, not toward the elevators where they could trap her, but toward the emergency stairwell on the far side of the building. She had memorized the floor plan years ago, part of her security assessment when she first started working at Meridian. Behind her, she could hear the men pursuing. They were fast, but they didn't know the office layout as well as she did. Margaret vaulted over a low cubicle wall and cut through the conference room area, gaining precious seconds. She reached the stairwell door and slammed through it. The echo of her footsteps on the concrete stairs would give away her position, but she had no choice. She needed to reach the parking garage where her car was waiting. Margaret took the stairs 3 at a time. Her business shoes weren't designed for running, but she had maintained her physical fitness even after leaving the agency. 8 years of desk work hadn't completely eliminated her operational capabilities. She could hear the men entering the stairwell above her, their voices echoing in the concrete chamber. Professional, coordinated, they were used to this kind of pursuit. Margaret reached the parking level and pushed through the heavy door. Her car was parked near the elevator bank. She fumbled with her keys while running, calculating whether she could reach the vehicle before the men emerged from the stairwell. She made it with seconds to spare. The engine started immediately, and Margaret reversed out of her parking space just as the stairwell door burst open. The men were shouting into radios now, calling for backup. This wasn't over. Margaret drove out of the parking garage and into the Seattle night, but she couldn't go home. They knew who she was and where she lived. She couldn't go to the police. Not yet. She needed time to think, to plan, to activate protocols she hadn't used in 12 years. Margaret drove to a 24-hour diner in a different part of the city. She parked where she could watch the entrance and pulled out a prepaid cell phone she kept for emergencies. It was time to make a call she had hoped she would never have to make. The number connected on the second ring. Thompson. "This is Mockingbird," Margaret said using her old CIA code name. "I need extraction." There was a pause. Mockingbird was retired 12 years ago. Mockingbird is active again, and in immediate danger. Another pause. "Location?" Margaret gave him the address of the diner. "How long?" 20 minutes. "Order coffee and keep your head down." Margaret hung up the phone and walked into the diner. She ordered black coffee and sat in a booth where she could watch both the entrance and the parking lot. Her hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline, but her mind was clear. She was back in operational mode. Exactly 20 minutes later, a nondescript sedan pulled into the parking lot. Margaret recognized the driver, James Thompson, her former handler at Langley, older now with gray hair and lines around his eyes, but still carrying himself with the careful alertness of a career intelligence officer. Margaret left money on the table and walked out to the car. "You look good for a dead woman," Thompson said, as she got into the passenger seat. "I'm not dead yet," Margaret replied, "but someone's trying to change that." Thompson drove while Margaret explained what she had discovered: the money laundering network, the shell companies, the men who had confronted her at the office. By the time she finished, they were at a safe house in Bellevue, an anonymous apartment maintained by the agency for situations exactly like this. "How much of this can you prove?" Thompson asked. "All of it." Margaret pulled a flash drive from her jacket pocket. "Bank records, corporate filings, transaction analyses, everything you need to roll up the entire network." Thompson plugged the drive into a secure laptop and began reviewing the files. After 20 minutes, he looked up with an expression Margaret remembered from their operational days. Grim satisfaction mixed with concern. "This is bigger than money laundering," he said. "Some of these shell companies are connected to foreign intelligence services, Chinese, Russian, maybe North Korean. They're not just washing criminal proceeds, they're funding espionage operations on U.S. soil." Margaret felt a familiar chill, the same feeling she used to get when an investigation revealed something darker and more dangerous than expected. What kind of operations? Industrial espionage, technology theft, recruitment of assets in defense contractors, the kind of activities that compromise national security. Thompson closed the laptop. "You've stumbled onto a counterintelligence nightmare. So what happens now? Now we clean it up, but carefully. We can't let them know how much we've discovered. If they realize the entire network has been compromised, they'll burn everything and disappear." Thompson made a secure phone call while Margaret showered and changed into clean clothes from the safe house wardrobe. When she emerged, he had prepared coffee and sandwiches. "The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit will raid Meridian tomorrow morning," he said, "along with simultaneous raids on the other businesses in the network. They'll arrest your CEO and several other co-conspirators. The story will be that an anonymous tip led to the investigation." "What about me?" "You're taking an extended vacation. Family emergency in California. You won't be available for questioning until the initial arrests are complete. By then your cover story will be solid." Margaret nodded. It was a good plan. Clean, minimal exposure. "And after that?" Thompson looked at her seriously. "That depends on you. The agency could use someone with your skills. Domestic financial intelligence is a growing priority. What you did here proves you haven't lost your edge." Margaret considered the offer. Part of her missed the work, the sense of purpose, the knowledge that her actions made a difference in the world. But she also remembered why she had left. The stress, the constant danger, the isolation that came with living a double life. "I need time to think about it," she said. "Fair enough. Take all the time you need. But Margaret, what you did tonight was exceptional. You saw a threat that others missed. You followed the evidence despite personal risk. You chose to do the right thing, even when it would have been easier to look the other way." Thompson stood up and handed her a new identity packet. Driver's license, credit cards, social security card. "Jennifer Walsh, software consultant from Portland. That's who you are until this is over." Margaret looked at the documents. Another name. Another identity, another life to maintain while her real self remained hidden. But some things were worth the sacrifice. "Thank you," she said. "No," Thompson replied. "Thank you. You may have prevented something catastrophic." 6 months later, the trials made national news. 17 people were convicted of money laundering, conspiracy, and espionage charges. Over $50 million in assets were seized. 3 foreign intelligence operatives were expelled from the country. The investigation led to additional cases in 12 other states. Margaret Chen returned to work at Meridian Tech Solutions, which was under new management following David Kellerman's arrest. She resumed her quiet life as a corporate accountant, processing invoices, reconciling bank statements, keeping the numbers balanced. But now she watched those numbers differently, looking for patterns that shouldn't exist, anomalies that might indicate something sinister hiding beneath the surface of legitimate business. Because Margaret had learned something important during her years away from intelligence work. Evil doesn't announce itself. It hides in plain sight, in mundane transactions and ordinary business relationships, in the spaces between what appears to be normal and what actually is normal. And sometimes it takes someone with the right training and the right instincts to spot the difference. Margaret Chen looked like just another accountant, quiet, reliable, unremarkable, but she was so much more than that. She was a guardian, a sentinel, standing watch over the financial systems that criminals and terrorists tried to exploit. Margaret never talked about her CIA background. She never mentioned the money laundering case or the lives that might have been saved by exposing the network. She simply continued showing up to work every day, balancing books, following the numbers, watching for patterns that didn't belong. Some protections are invisible. Some heroes work in cubicles. Some of the most important victories happen in spreadsheets, where ordinary-looking people with extraordinary backgrounds make sure the bad guys don't win. So I ask you, have you ever worked with someone whose attention to detail seemed almost supernatural? Someone who noticed things others missed? Someone whose quiet competence suggested they might have stories they chose not to tell? Tell us about them in the comments, because here at One Human, One Story, we believe that the most effective guardians are often the ones you'd never suspect. Sometimes the accountant who catches your expense report errors learned precision under very different circumstances. Sometimes the person who seems ordinary has spent years protecting things that matter more than quarterly earnings. And sometimes the greatest service happens in silence by people who choose duty over recognition every single day. If this story moved you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes don't always carry badges or wear uniforms. Sometimes they carry calculators and work in accounting departments. We'll see you in the next story. And until then, remember that the most dangerous enemies are often the ones hiding in plain sight, and the most valuable allies are the ones who know how to find them.